So my wife and I, we just finished watching Amazon Prime series House of David, and overall it was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. My wife liked it. With shows like that are trying to depict stories from the Bible, it can be really hit or miss. The creators did a decent job. There are a few things that I had questions on, or why they did certain creative decisions, but we started it like last week watching it, and over the weekend, last weekend, we were traveling to one of our son's basketball tournaments, and I noticed that the terrain, and maybe it was just because we were watching the series the night before, I was like, hey, a lot of this looks like it could be in House of David, the terrain just nearby where we live. And so I did a little research, and I saw that it was filmed in Greece and in near Calgary. And now I don't live near Calgary, but the terrain is very similar. Calgary, I think, is sort of at the base of the Rocky Mountains, so it's not in the mountains. That would be very similar to where I live. So I don't know which shots were filmed in Calgary, which ones were in Greece. I think most of it was in Greece. But I just felt like the overall feel of the film, the landscape, the terrain was very similar to where I live. I felt inspired to go out and try and capture some footage of the local area here and sort of kind of match the feel of House of David, because it's a really well done TV series. I really like the colors on it, with the terrain, because it was, you had it looked like a dry, arid climate. Then you had these like splashes of green with the shrubs and the trees, and then the deep blue skies with the clouds. Like, I don't know, I just really liked the cinematography on it. Felt really inspired, and so I kind of just want to go out and try and capture something similar here near where I live. Before I had ventured out, I went and I hopped on Google Maps and I did my location scouting on there. I've been in this area before where I'm going, but I wanted to see if my memory wasn't failing me and that it really did look like what I remembered it looking like. Surprisingly, there was a Google Street View of this rural gravel road, which really helped me a lot. Imagine that. And I was able to pin a couple different locations, and honestly, it saved me a lot of time. I wasn't wasting time going out there looking for somewhere to shoot. I kind of knew where I was going when I left. So I mentioned in my last vlog when I was at the Buffalo Ranch, I had mentioned, because it was so dry, at springtime around here, everything's pretty dry still. We got to wait for the sun to come out to really get the grass green. We need some rain too. And I had mentioned in the vlog just how like desaturated and just kind of ugly it looked. I thought it did. That was I think that was about 2 weeks ago when I did that, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Since then, it's rained a few days. We had a couple days of rain. That brought a little bit of color into the grass and stuff. So this is kind of exactly what I was looking for. I feel like, the green on these shrubs, these trees, some of these plants, they kind of fit that feel that I was looking for, that I saw in House of David. I don't know why I felt so inspired by the TV series. The colors and everything kind of fits my mood or my vibe, I guess. I just got out to the first location that I pinned. So I'm gonna get my camera, I brought with me my FX6, and I'm mostly going to use the 35 G Master. I did bring my 70 to 200, but I kind of wanted to stick to my primes here, just that prime. And I put a CPL filter on it so that I could really get the blue skies to pop. So that's what I'm working with now. I'm just gonna wander around, grab some footage. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that my truck is fixed. I can finally use it.
Usually when I'm shooting outdoors, I'll set my white balance to like 5600 Kelvin and just leave it at that. But since I was trying to capture the feel of the TV show, I decided to bump it up, anywhere from like 6000 to 7200 Kelvin, just to give it that warmer feel. And I don't know what was up with my circular polarizer, but it was giving me like this weird reddish tint towards the bottom left of the image. Actually, the filter that I was using, it was an ND/CPL or circular polarizer. I did notice the little tint while I was filming, but I left it in for what I'll call artistic purposes. And it's interesting because I've used this filter before, albeit it was on a different lens, and I've never had that problem. I don't know if it was the combination of the 35mm from Sony. That's never happened to me before, so I'll have to look into that. One of the things that I forgot to mention while I was out there is that I also brought with me a vintage Helios lens that I have, the 44-2. It's a 58mm lens. It's an old Soviet lens, kind of popular on YouTube. You could look it up. I got mine on Etsy a couple years ago, and from what I understand, it can really be hit or miss. But here's a couple shots that I took with it. One of the things that I really appreciate about House of David is that it brings to life these characters that we only really read about. And I think it's neat how they're able to fill in some of the gaps that you don't get while reading a story. And it could be any written story, because with film, you get to see facial expressions, hear the tone of someone's voice, see the fear in someone's eyes, all things that are missed when you're just reading something. And the biblical narrative, if you read it, these stories, they tend to go pretty quick. They give you some drive-by facts of a particular story. For example, the writers of the Bible will often tell you what someone did, but not really go into the details as to the motivations for why a person did a particular thing. And sometimes it's inferred in the story, and other times it might not be. And I think that's what House of David is doing, is it's exploring some of the motivations behind, these different characters in the story, while at the same time staying true to the biblical text. At least that's my opinion. They even have a disclaimer at the beginning of each episode, basically saying they've taken creative liberties and for storytelling purposes. And I don't see a problem with that yet. Overall, it's a great TV series. I just saw it was renewed for another season, and I can't wait to watch that one. But there are so many, there are gaps in some of the stories, not anything that's missing in terms of we don't get the full story. It's just, the way these texts were written, they had limited space on the scrolls that they were writing in, so they had to be succinct and they had to get to the point. I think it even says at the end of the Gospel of John that if he had written everything that Jesus had done, there wouldn't be enough books to hold all of the stories. And so for a TV series to come along and creatively tell that story, filling in some of those gaps while staying true to the overall theme of the book, I don't see a problem with that. I actually quite enjoy the TV series. And as someone who is a storyteller or an artist, that's something that resonates with me and I vibe with.
So that was actually really fun. I had a good time, you know, just wandering around, getting some shots, and you know, the next time I kind of look at this as kind of like maybe a test run for maybe something bigger. I don't know. I know if I had to do it again, I would like to get like an anamorphic lens, do something a little more cinematic. But I had a fun time. It was fun to get out and, you know, shoot some stuff. And I'm doing this for no reason other than I just felt inspired to do it, you know. And sometimes you just gotta get up off your butt and go do something. And that's really all this is. I wasn't getting paid to do this. There's, you know, really no reason. Other than I just felt inspired to do it. You know, it's just something that I hope to do again. Maybe I'll do another vlog like this where I go somewhere else. I feel like this part of the state is, you know, it has its beauty too. I know a lot of people, when they think of Montana, they think of the mountains, and, you know, but that's on the western, you know, 1/3 of the state. The other 2/3 of Montana looks kind of like this, and I actually prefer it. You know, I spent some time last summer. If you watched my vlogs when I went to the different farms, I spent a lot of time in western Montana, and I was deep in the mountains in a couple of those vlogs, and I think it's safe to say I prefer this side of the state. But that's all I have for today. I thank you for tuning in and watching. In the next vlog, in my next one, I will be going to Billings again. So the vlog that I did a couple ago, I think it was number 16, when I went and did the provider introduction videos. They asked me to come back and do, I think I'm doing like 19 more. So I'll be filming 19 sit-down interviews over the course of a couple days, and that will be next week. So I'm pretty sure that'll be my next vlog. So stay tuned for that one. And that's all the time I have for today. So I'll see you in that one.